Prototype Playtime.
Prototype Playtime, we're back. We gotta look at a 2-pack from Mastermind Creations. This is Reformatted Gravus and Ebrius. I think I got their names right. It's kind of a brawn and kind of a guzzle. These guys are a 2-pack. These are test shots. These are not complete, but I have a small window of time to have a little run-through on them, so let's take a look. These vehicle modes are a sort of Cybertronian quad tank thing, reminiscent of animated Cybertronian Ratchet and the Auto Troopers. Ebrius is just a tank. That's straight up an alien Cybertronian tank. Gravus is kind of like one of those, but with the middle modified to look sort of like a pickup truck. So it's kind of like those gigantic brodozers that are like super raised up pickup trucks that drive around Victoria, BC in a little 2-lane downtown road, and they're way too big for those roads, they're way too big for everything. Why do they have these gigantic brodozers? That's besides the point. In this scenario, I do think it's pretty cute, like right down to having little tail lights amidst giant rear tread leggy things. By the way, those rear tread leggy things, you can pivot those in this mode. These parts are tabbed in, so they're not supposed to move. You can untab them to move them if you want, but they are supposed to stay tabbed in. So there's your vehicle motor. Here's some vehicle motor articulation. There's also a waggling turret on Ebrius, and the guns do come off. Like, you don't have to leave them there. I just like leaving them on there because where else am I going to put them? My pockets? These beefy little things are definitely a bit bigger than Deluxes, but also definitely something that can fit into a 2-pack. I'm curious if they're going to be in the 2-pack in bot mode or vehicle mode, like in the packaging. But getting down to the beeswax, let's transform them up. And that beeswax begins with some turret in suction. I'm recording this audio while I watch the transformation. Look, there's tabs and there's swivels. The transformation's not like the most groundbreaking thing. You can kind of see where the limbs are. So it's mostly tricks-wise making the treads disappear, like as you're seeing there with that fairly satisfying foot flip. It's nice feeling in your hands when you open and close those shin and calf latches. As for the forearms, the treads here don't really disappear. They just kind of suck into the forearm mass, but if you see there's 2 different rectangular slots there, the tab goes into a different one in robot mode than the one it was in vehicle mode. This makes the outer forearm hunk with the tread stick out a little bit more, but also suck backwards a little bit more. I'm saying suck a lot, which is a strange verb to use for something that's not inhaling. Anyway, that torso mass is moving in multiple sections, but it's all quite linear. It's hard to get lost. I find I have to use the movement of that backpack to get the head to come out. It was just very tight. It might be different on the finished piece, and then you're just unveiling some shoulder pads. But what if in a different reality we're doing this with the brawny looking one instead? This is slightly different in that the shoulder pads are not as exposed, they're a lot more internalized. I'm saying it's a lot different. Really, it's a whole lot the same, except that some things just tab together differently and the backpack's bigger. And as you can see, more or less these motions are the same. You know, that chest piece is still a long, that noise, a long line of hinges just sucking inwards. I said suck again. I'm so sorry, everybody. In their robot modes, these dudes are stocky and stocky. Ebrius looks a whole lot like Last Stand of the Wrecker's Guzzle, and given how their limbs and core are basically identical, it's kind of impressive how Gravus looks more like a brawn than a, boxy Guzzle. If you're curious about the secret, it's basically pectoral implants. He's got emboxeners on his chest. The shoulder pads are different as well, and the backpacks are quite obviously different. If you're wondering, before I even show you how any of the joints work, because this backpack, right, is obviously much bigger than this one, its transformation joint lets it get mostly out of the way of the legs, such that you can still twist the waist and kick backwards, about that far. As far back a kick as a Gravus is going to kick. I don't really see this dude as a mule kicker. If you do, then, my condolences. The head sculpts do a lot of work to carry through the identity of these 2 characters as well. And their accessories, their handheld guns, are, well, identical. They don't really do much for the identity, they just give them things to shoot with. You can open up their hands, fit the gun handle inside their palm, and then close the fingers over top. There's no tabbed connection, so we'll see how this all turns out on the final pieces with all their finished tolerances. Oh, also, if you want to be like a complete monster, you can comic accurate bisect these dudes. I mean, obviously it's mostly meant for him. It's just not a T-peg, I guess like a 4-way T-peg, like a square mushroom going into a C-clip, or I guess a D-clip. But it's fairly solid. Even on a test shot. it's probably going to be way more solid on the finished ones. I don't know. I'm in the past. If you're from the future watching this, then, like, tell me how it turned out. And if you want to be a double monster, I mean, you can do what never happened to him in Transformers the movie, you know, or at least the guy he looks a lot like, and you can bisect him as well, because, you know, they're mold cousins, mold siblings. Anyway, the articulation on these folks, ball socket heads with lots of wiggle. You can look around as well, but, you know, really it's the wiggle that matters. Shoulders move like this, and outwards with a movable shoulder pad and a double jointed elbow. No wrist swivel, but a ball socket, slightly curly thumb, and individually knuckle jointed curly fingers. Thanks to the transformation, a rearwards butterfly motion. Not forwards, but rearwards. Waist rotation! Still do that if you want to. And an ab crunch I forgot to mention when I recorded the posability. Them legs can kick, and they can kick back. In fact, if you take this one, they can kick way back. And they've also got this outward motion here. Dedicated thigh swivel, dedicated knee. Is that a thing? A dedicated 90-degree knee? Some of that ankle tiltlage. It tiltolates all the way out to here. And then if you use the transformation joint, you can arc the toe. Then a toe motion, you can heel the heel in heel motions, and if you want to be super cool, you can also bend the heel back down to allow for some of this kind of walking forward posture with the secret quad pod of the heels pointed down to balance the counterweightage of the gravity with the... You know how you put a figure down... Here, look. That's what I'm talking about. That's all I'm talking about right there. See that? Yeah. Anyway, that's the prototype Playtime story of these two. Remember, these ain't reviews. I didn't say it a million times like I usually do. Hopefully y'all remember from previous prototype Playtimes. I have no idea how the finished version's going to turn out, but this is a glimpse of how these work. That's a taste of some of that visual hand feel, eye touch, some of that optic molestation. Thanks to Mastermind Creations for letting me do a quick filming session with these while they're in transit, and thank you all for checking it out. Remember, if you want to know how the finished versions of these guys turned out, especially if you're from the future and they've already come out, go check feedback threads, reviews, and etc. In the meantime, I'll just live here in the past, with memories of all my lovely patrons on Patreon, all of my beautiful baristas and coffee. Perhaps in the far-flung future where you're from, dear viewer, I've come up with more than one definition for each of the folks who support me via those sites.